Good afternoon. It's Mark Dyer, Muriel's grandson, coming up with the latest chapter in this long-running saga. To just collect my grandmother's bones, as you all know, those who have been following it for the last 4 years, or even 56 years, really want to see resolution, probably as much as I do, and certainly not as much as my mother, Ian, and also my mother's elder sister, Jenny. Look, we've come a long way. My grandmother is buried somewhere in Bethnal Green. She was mixed with some farm animal remains. We've found some of those remains, but those bones have been sadly tampered with and removed. One not by the police, which it should have been, some by the police that we've asked for. We get uncertain, we don't get reports, we don't get answers, we don't get anything official, we just get, oh, it's probably not human. Look, the Israel connection, Hayley Frice, who is the witness to all of this as a 9-year-old girl, said my grandmother was in 3 black bin liners. All the remains were in 3 black bin liners downstairs. The next day, she was put in the garden. According to her father, that smell is gone. She's now in the garden by the tree. We haven't dug around the tree. In fact, it's very easy to dig up the backyard. We want to finish digging up. We've only done some point digging so far. It would take, give or take, 2 guys about 1 day. 1 day to go to 6 foot. The ground is very soft. We've dug down 6 foot in 2 hours before. There are just some weeds planted in our way at the moment, and it's sad that no one really wants us to have my grandmother back. There are too many people invested in her not coming back. Now, why is that? Why wouldn't you want to let a family have some bones? Some bones, no flesh, just a few bones of Muriel, so they can be buried with my mother at her house, or at my mother's house rather. And I find this very distasteful, that we've got to a position in society where people think that they can block people in the police decide not to help, which would be a majorly cheap operation, and actually in fact act against us now. When we had such a good relationship with them when we were doing the dig. And I'm sure at the end of the day, their job is to see crime solved. My grandmother's is considered solved, and this is the problem. But it's not solved for us. A conviction of M1 and M2 doesn't solve anything. M3 got away. The police allowed M3 to get away. M3 went on to become a major gangster and kill other people. Also, don't forget the Polish soldier, the shopkeeper in Bethnal Green, whose daughters now come back to us. All of them up to their necks in my grandmother's death. All of these people allowed to get away. Others, Nizam's girlfriend, Lily Mohammed. She supplied the drugs to drug my grandmother up, to make her quiet. But my grandmother crawled to a telephone on the 29th of December at 2:30 p.m. Crawled to that phone in Stocking Farm and made one call. David Dyer picked up that call. Have a look on TikTok. You can see David Dyer's interview from 1970. That's my dad. And she picked up the phone. He picked up the phone. She was at the end of the phone. He said, that's my mother-in-law. She said, it's a Grey Hillman. And then the phone was ripped out of her hand. We now know that she was beaten senseless after that. And died of her injuries, or was killed the next day as being a problem, and buried in the garden. Nizam's told us that she was buried in the garden with a dead calf to cover it up, to mix her up. We also think my grandmother was chopped into a number of pieces with the calf, and therefore it's quite quite a common way to hide a body with animal remains. It was decided as the wife was coming back, as Mrs. Hussein was coming back, I believe her name's Elsa, with her children, to Stocking Farm on the 4th of January 1970. It was decided they had to get her out of there. Nizam claims subsequently he was not aware of her being moved. Now, that may just be an outright lie, but let's just say it's not. He was the younger member of the team. Yes, he was very vicious, but he sincerely believed he was telling me the truth. Now, if he wasn't, what would have happened? If he was, what would have happened? Well, let's have a look if he was. If he was telling me the truth, then perhaps Arthur, his brother, and the Polish soldier moved her into those bags. We presume it's the Polish soldier, who Haley Fleiss said was heavily involved in this and had a lot of experience with moving dead bodies from World War II, sadly in Poland, where there had been a terrible campaign. So all these points have now come together. We've now collated all these points, and we've got what we think is very near the truth. Very simple. There are 3 places: Arthur Road, Rooks Farm, and Bethnal Green. Bethnal Green was where my uncle went in Rupert's Rolls Royce, or my uncle was meant to, rather. A policeman went in his place to take a phone call opposite Bethnal Green Road, the betting shop. The phone rang, and there was Arthur Hussein on the phone saying, "I can see you're not being followed. Well done. Go to the next phone box." And it was phone box to phone box. But what was interesting, how could he see? Because he was in the shop. I'm going to introduce you now to Tariq El-Gazzar. And Tariq is a solicitor at Velvet Law in Mayfair. And he is helping the family deal with this mind-numbing situation we're in. Tariq, what do you think? And what do you think you can do?
Thank you, Mark, for that pleasant introduction. Before I go into detail, I just want to express my disdain and disgust at the way in this case has been handled, but simultaneously admire the compassion and admiration that I have for the McKays, Dyers and Levinsons and how they've dealt with, remained composed and attempted to seek justice for this. In terms of my involvement, although I'm relatively new to the case, we have a new line of direction. We are, as best as we can, persevering with the police to obtain the rights to the report, which we are entitled to. They've been met with delays and non-responses. We've sent correspondence to the Chief Commissioner, who again has ignored us without providing responses. So we now are in the process of taking a new step, which is to obtain a warrant to return to Bethnal Green Road and to undertake further digging and excavation, which we deem necessary on the basis that there is no conclusive clarity that can rule out the remains of the deceased Muriel McKay. We are working hard, but we are confronted by challenges from the police who, as Mark has carefully stated, do not wish to assist or do not wish to put us in a position which could accelerate things. We're working hard and taking instructions from our clients and the family, and it's a very sensitive and challenging case, but it demands action and it demands substantive change. And we want to also use it as an opportunity to have a look at how the police force are dealing with people who have suffered for nearly half a century with this pain.
Thank you, Tariq. And I would really like to know what you as a lawyer for the family have got planned, what action we can actually take. Is there any action we can actually take, or do we live in this kind of purgatory?
So the action we can take in terms of next steps is waiting to obtain a warrant of access. We need the police to expressly deny or confirm this. If they don't do this, the next step would be to undertake a judicial review process, and the judicial review process would enable us to, one, at the end of the day, determine if that ruling by the police was accurate or fair, which we would dispute in any event, and following that, escalate it with the objective of obtaining a warrant. The report, which is linked to the same, needs to enable us to enter again. We will scrutinise that and analyse that and use that as a basis to gain entry again. And we consider that this strategy, ultimately going forward, will provide us with another gateway for access to the property.
Okay, that's very interesting. So we hopefully will get a judicial review if the judiciary get involved and a judge sees this makes sense. The police, there are various members of the police who did want to dig this yard up properly and put an end to it, because it is the last lead. There are no more. There are no more leads. And this is the last lead that makes sense. It was never properly investigated in 1970. And it makes sense that Haley's father, who was 96, I believe, when he died, was explaining the situation for the last year of his life to his daughter. And his daughter, 3 weeks after he died, is at Scotland Yard from Israel, explaining what she's heard. Sadly, they never explained that to us until 2 years later, the reward was put out there. The reward, we've been told by her, they're not interested in. They're interested in closure for us. You know, all I want is the end to this misery, the end to the last lead, a positive end. Why were bones found 1.6 metres down? Very unusual, isn't it? One bone, the first bone, which was actually left there and only photographed by the police, and they decided it wasn't human. But we wanted that bone because we needed to find out whether it was a cow, because the calf was buried with my grandmother, we believe. And the Attorney General in September 1970, the Attorney General of Great Britain, said he believed that the cow had a significant part to play in the unsolved murder of my late grandmother, Muriel McKay. And I think that people think because it's 56 years ago, it's too long ago. Why would we care? Plenty of bad things going on now we need to sort out. But really, we've done all the groundwork. A few gardeners can do it. No great expense. And even if the police said, look, we'll do it, but we need paying, because it's easier if they do it from the social, local point of view, we'd be happy to pay. So it's logical, and the logical conclusion is what makes sense. And all of you know this makes sense. This makes a lot of sense. And I know if any of you who are interested in this case have been following it for all those years, I think a lot of you want it solved. I know it's been an interesting story because it goes around the houses and round in circles, and there have been all kinds of conspiracies. But the truth is, the simple truth is, my mum, as I knew her, was walking into her house and was hooded, pushed in there and robbed, and then cajoled into a car on the basis that she'd be let out 5 miles away where she could cause no trouble, and they would have made their getaway. Unfortunately, she spent another hour and 45 minutes in that car and then was locked in a bedroom upstairs. She was certainly dead within 24 hours. And the Hussein brothers have not spoken of where she is except for Nizam. We've had a look what Nizam says. Nizam said she wasn't moved, but we have on good authority she was, from Haley Fries, who was alive and a witness who can be interviewed and has been interviewed and said the same to various news channels and has signed an affidavit. What else do you need? I thought that would be a dream for any detective, to give them an affidavit from a witness. You know, for many years, the police had people in the prisons working for them, trying to get answers out of their same brothers. I got those answers. And I'm looking for your sort of continuing support for us. Tariq, I'm looking forward to a successful campaign from you.
Yes, I'm dedicated and here to assist. Everything that can be done in our power to facilitate this from a legal perspective will be done. We're working closely with Mark and the family to support them through this difficult time and get the best result we can.
Great stuff. Thank you very much for listening to this extended bulletin, and there'll be further bulletins shortly.